Hello and welcome to Brilliance Today, where individuals let their brilliance shine through their stories, expertise and philosophy, because they're on a mission to make a difference and leave a legacy. Introducing Brenda Dempsey, publisher, speaker and TV presenter. Get ready to be inspired.
Hello and welcome to Brilliance Today. And I don't know about you, but I've heard that behind every great woman is another great woman. Have you heard that one before? Well, I'm Brenda Dempsey. I don't know if I'd say I'm great, but I'm CEO and publisher of Book Brilliance Publishing. I've got a great guest with me today, another amazing woman who is part of this wonderful journey, Voices of Women, and her name is Eve Stanway. Hi, Eve.
Hello, Brenda. Thank you for having me here today. It's really good.
Oh, you're welcome. And I don't know about you, but by the time we're finished, my face is hurting already because all we do is smile and laugh when we have these little chats. So this is the Voice of Women series for our podcast. And it's just wonderful to have you here. Wonderful that you said yes to being part of this journey. Before we get into all of that, people need to find out who you are, what you do, what makes you tick, and why do you do what you do? So, Eve, over to you.
So I am a psychotherapist and a breakup and divorce coach, and I have been really privileged to talk to people over the years about their lives and about what they've been going through. And doing that encouraged me to reflect on my own life, because that's a part of this kind of work. Everything that we do, it kind of reflects back into ourselves. And I think I probably, like a lot of people, thought that my upbringing was somehow unique and my feelings were unique. But the more work that I've done over the years and working as a psychotherapist and as a divorce coach, the more I've discovered that we've all got our story and we've all got our voice. And there's real importance in bringing that out and being willing to do that. So I really enjoy working with groups and talking to people about their relationships, because for me, talking about a relationship, being in a relationship, is all about sharing your thoughts and feelings. And that's all about expressing yourself and listening as well and finding out about other people. So that's kind of the essence of what I do, I suppose, and why I'm so excited to be here with you today, Brenda.
I know you actually, you are an amazing woman, and there's lots more to come. We can maybe mention at the end as well. But you've been very humble there in how you've described what you do, and very humble indeed about who you are. And people will get a flavour of that in your chapter, but let's leave that. I want to dig more about you and your work and what drives you. So what drives you is one of my words, to being a psychotherapist. Where did that come from?
When I was growing up, I grew up under difficult circumstances, and I mean, kind of to get to the kind of brutal point of it, I discovered that the best way of getting through life as a child was observing and really trying to second guess and work out what adults were doing primarily. I think a lot of children, and a lot of parents, they're worried about how children interact with children. But in my particular upbringing, it was the interactions with adults that were problematic. And it took me, I studied sciences when I eventually managed to get myself an education and go to school, because my father kept me at home, so I didn't go to school. Mainly kept me at home to look after him, actually. So I got my education later on in life, and I discovered something called philosophy, which when I went to university, I was meant to study politics, but because I'd gone in there in a bit of hadn't really gone straight through the front door, because that's what life was like for me. I was kind of worked it out as I went on. Anyway, I discovered philosophy and the way that language and thought go together. And from there, I went and I worked as a secretary. I worked in banking firms and law firms, and I continued to try and study and learn more. And I was just always fascinated by language. And then one day, a fantastic secretary came in who was temping and said, "Come on, darling, you need to become a hypnotherapist," and dragged me off that weekend to go and do a hypnotherapy course. And then from there, I discovered there was a thing. And so I went and I pursued my studies to become a psychotherapist. And then I pursued more studies to become a divorce and breakup coach. But underneath it all was a real deep desire to be able to understand the complexities of how we think and the way we speak, how they relate to each other and how they come out. Because I could see people in the therapy space, and they're there being very good, and they're brave people coming and talking about their anxieties and their fears and their childhoods. And they're talking about these things, or they're trying to talk about these things. And they're talking about it to me as a therapist because I'm a safe person that they can talk to, but they don't know how to talk to their families about it. They don't know how to talk to their friends about how they're feeling. They don't know how to ask without it kind of turning into a confrontation or an argument. And honestly, Brenda, that is what drives me. It's weird, isn't it? They say that if you do a job you love, you never work. I never cease to be interested in the process of what we're trying to say and how we're trying to hear and how we're trying to understand, and just how difficult that is to do in close relationships. You know, the most important relationships in our lives, and we can't tell someone how we're feeling unless we use a big word like going, "I love you," and that means I really love you, but I don't know how to tell you that I feel like I end up doing most of the chores, or I really love you, but I'm worried about your health, and when I raise it to you, you shut me down. You know, it's all these little but really massive things in life, and I just find it interesting every single day, every minute of every day. I find it interesting. I think that's what you're looking for in life sometimes.
Yeah.
Somebody who
I
finds
mean,
something just so
I
interesting.
know what you mean. For me, it's like the word voice, and we'll come on to that in a minute as well. You know, the word voice. Well, actually, let me go back a bit because I didn't actually mean to say that. Psychology and how the mind works and how people tick really fascinated me. And I got into NLP many years ago just because I was interested, but I didn't do anything about it until about 7, 8 years ago. Because I thought, well, if the way language is used and the mindset and how we think, and then we bring in emotional intelligence and how we feel, it's a whole ball of complex. It's like a whole mishmash, you know. But when you master them and you understand them, you can create something beautiful. And I find it quite sad, really, that more people don't put more importance on it. We go to school and we learn English and maths and sciences and things that we might never. I was just thinking about this other day. It was something to do with maths, and I thought, what maths do I use in my life today? I love maths and I was good at maths.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm thinking, well, do I use maths in my everyday life? No, I don't. So I can understand you need to get to a certain level of arithmetic and things like that. But some of the other subjects aren't as important growing up. It's better to develop communication and speaking and understanding, and, you know, understanding yourself and how interactions more important. And then it gets to a point in your life when you're old enough to decide what you want to do. And then you seek that. But no, that's not how the world works according to like people today who are still living 200 years ago. Concepts, we're not looking at the concepts of today. So you know, so we're very similar in it's how do people tick and why they like that, and understanding it, and how can we change it, and how do we get people interested in wanting to learn more to be better. How did you do that for yourself?
I think I've always been really struck, and I was, you know, I traveled a lot when I was young, but I was always struck. People used to say, you would hear people going on about the importance of education. Like, why is education so important? As people will save up all of their money to send somebody to go and get an education. So
what was the desire in you for you to learn and really understand so that you could change and then create that ripple effect for others?
I was blessed in some ways by not having a good education when I was young. And one of the things that happens if you don't get sent to school is you dream about going to school. You dream about getting an education. You kind of want to know. I think children have a really inbuilt desire to know. I think the human brain is designed for curiosity. And certainly you see brain health survives in humans who continue to display curiosity. And the brain's so interesting because it keeps growing and it keeps changing. So I think we're inbuilt. I think an awful lot of my struggle with the school system is, as I see, it's almost like a learning prevention place to try and get rid of the curiosity for learning, which is a sad thing to say, but as an outsider looking in, that's how it's felt. So I think humans are naturally curious, actually, and this is where kind of my work, a lot of the work that I do is about counteracting shaming and blaming and criticizing and judging and comparing. And comparing is a really big thing. Like, if we think about a competition, if somebody's going to be in a competition, they have to qualify for that competition. But in life, people use comparison and comparing without any, competition criteria, if you like. And so education, education is a flat leveler. All of us can learn. Every single person can learn. And all of us, Arnold Bennett wrote a really good short essay on what to do, how to live for 24 hours. And I firmly believe that every single 24 hours we have is an opportunity to learn and discover stuff. And I think the brain is set for that. And I think the healthiest brains are doing that. However, if we've got this internally self-critical, self-analytical, self-negative comparison world going on, then our ability to learn and take in information is hampered because we feel like we're in the wrong. We feel like stupid. So if you look at the way imposter syndrome works, people, as soon as somebody is challenging themselves to do something new, they're likely to be hit with imposter syndrome of, oh, well, I should already know how to do it. So there's all these psychological internal desires to learn and barriers to learning. And what I see is, and I know it's a long answer to a short question, which is always the way it goes, but anxiety is one of the key things that prevents people from learning, because when your amygdala is firing because you're anxious, you're not going to learn. So what drives me in talking about voices and why I was so interested in this project is because this is about getting that voice out positively, and that's what then gives you the key to learning and understanding and growing. And honestly, that's what I think we're here for.
And in terms of, so I worked in education for 25 years, and actually what you said about it is exactly right. And that's why I'm not a teacher any longer, because you get to a point in your life and you think, wait a minute, this isn't right, and I worked in special educational needs, and I worked with children with a lot of emotional issues and damage and all sorts of stuff going on. And it was like, why are we trying to take these kids and, the square peg in the round hole, or the round batten in the square, and I was battling with the system that I worked in, because I was there to protect these children. And some children who hadn't eaten, hadn't sleeping, were getting detention because they didn't have a pen. How draconian is that? But I think barriers away, don't have those crazy little rules.
But I'm not, I know it's a big kind of thing about the school system, but I remember years ago teaching my son. Okay, so I taught my son, he brought it up the other day, he's 22 now, Michael, and I taught him, he was doing Larkswood's Got Talent, his local school, where they had to do something. And so he learnt The Charge of the Light Brigade, the poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade. And the aim was, and I said, your goal is to see if you can get tears in your audience, if you can get them to emotionally connect with the words. And it wasn't about learning the poem. And it was about what I was thinking about then was teaching him how to present, and also how to really get those emotions going in the audience. Because one real good way of not worrying too much about yourself in self-consciousness is thinking about what the impact on your audience is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those kind of skills are then the skills that I see, sadly, my daughter experience, where she had a presentation and her slides weren't working, so she had to remember it, and she was told, okay, well, you didn't quite get to the end of the presentation, but your time's over, so we'll have to finish it now. So her opportunity, and I don't think it was a male-female thing, but I think that's going to have a really negative impact on her professional speaking, possibly. My son's had that positive experience. That's probably the most important thing that they could have learned at secondary school, is how to stand up and speak in front of people.
Exactly.
Everything else you can look up on Google, but you can't look that up.
So I was thinking about this. Fun enough, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's about, I was thinking about how children learn, and when I was teaching, so this is like the late 90s going into the 2000s, and they were starting to use technology more. So you would have an IT lesson one a week and they could research, and there's a place for computers and there's a place for all of that, So I was thinking in maths, going back to maths, I was just thinking, well, if you want a child to get practicing going addition, right? 12 plus 22 and all of that. Yes, give them games on the computer, but to get the understanding, you need to actually teach the mechanics of that. And then you need to teach skills. A computer can't teach you the skill. It can give you practice, so you can get the overlearning, and you can you can do things like that. So I do believe everything's got its place. My father said everything in moderation, and I kind of believe that to a certain extent. Unless you want to get brilliant at something, you need to kind of get a bit obsessive over it.
Yes.
But so I think we're on the same page in terms of, so both of us are curious. We like to learn. We want to know how people are ticking. How can we make it better for ourselves, for other people? And this is why I do anthologies. So let's get round to Voices of Women now, because I think people can begin to understand, and we can say at the end how they can learn more about you. But Voices of Women, an anthology, it's about female leadership today and how women are stepping into that female leadership. So let's talk about that. And can you explain what you perceive leadership to be in this day and age, and then from a female point of view?
So I think that leadership is, I think it's something we're all capable of. And I actually would go so far to think that we all have a duty towards leadership, actually, which is a bold statement, but having thought about it, I am going to make that statement. I think leadership in general terms comes from consolidating what we've learned or what we've noticed in our lives, and using that information to guide others, to be a guide, to share wisdom, to share knowledge, to share understanding. And leadership is an extra bit of that guiding, which is where you add in that nurturing people, that inspiring them, that being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, come on, let's give it a go. Like, you can do it. I'm willing to share how I got here so that I can help you understand that you can get there where you want to go. And I think if people I've always got this analogy in my head of kind of, I was brought up at sea. If you were rescued and you're in your lifeboat and you climb out onto the ship that's rescuing you, you reach back and you pull people up behind you. And I think the human race is like a series of handholds of people, pushing out to those who maybe don't know what we know, so we can share what we know. And who knows, it's like a seed. It might flower, it might not flower, but you still cast it out there. And being willing to do that and seeing it as a responsibility that we've all got something we can share and lead on. Everyone.
Yeah.
That, just, it makes me feel really confident and comfortable about the world if we can look at it that way, really.
Yeah,
No,
that's beautiful. Absolutely, Eve, you know. So we've got men and women, and I'm probably even being like, somebody will go, you know, you've got to be careful what you say today. But you know, you're born a male, you're born a female, and we've got leaders of all different shapes, colour, sizes, religions, the lot. But what is it about female leadership that makes it stand out? Because I do believe female leadership stands out.
So I think in my studies about looking at the brain and looking at people and talking to people, I think that there are distinct differences between men and women. And I'm just going to use that kind of biological distinction. And I think, you know, there's always this idea that women can multitask, and apparently that's not true. What women can do is women can flip from one thing to another. And women are often less overwhelmed, although sometimes they can be more overwhelmed, but often less overwhelmed by emotional impacts. So the value of leadership in women is that there's likely to be, not always, and again, I am making broad generalizations, but there is likely to be a slightly more empathic quality to leadership within women. I also think that for women, female leaders are particularly inspiring because there's that ability to identify. And I think it's really important that men have male role models and male leaders, but it's also really important they have female role models and female leaders, and vice versa. Women need men who are good leaders too. But we bring a different flavor, we bring a different quality. And I think that society, what we're going to say, that women sometimes need a little bit more of extra encouragement to get their voices out. That's what I think is really important by what you're doing here, because you're creating that space in the same way that I know that you're creating that space for male leaders to talk about these things too. And I think opening up the linguistic conversational space like this, Brenda, is really significant, because it's not about one being better or one being this, that, and the other. About
thank you.
Thank
you. I'm going to applaud you for that.
Yeah, because that's what you're doing, and it's welcoming that space. Come into this space and talk about your story of leadership. You know, you have inspired me by doing this to actually hear my own leadership voice, because we can have it but not have heard it. That makes sense. And I think that that's what's so powerful about this, and why I'm so interested to be involved in it, because it's create that space. And I think women my daughter needs to see me as a leader, my son needs to see me as a leader, and I need to see myself as a leader.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So there's just space.
Yeah, let's just quickly touch on voice, because we've sort of spoken about it. So all my books have got the word voice in them, because voice is very important to me, and I know it's equally important to you, because we've had many conversations. And for me, voice means truth. It's not just saying what you think you can say. It's voicing your personal truth, based on your experiences, based on your expertise. But it's truth with love, compassion, respect. It's respect for yourself and having a right to voice your opinion. But that opinion, I mean, look, we've got an election going on and people have got opinions, but those opinions don't help people grow, they're cutting. So for me, when I ask people to share their voice and their truth, I want a voice that's going to grow and nurture and support other people, not slate them and say all sorts of obscenities and negativity towards a group of people. That's not what I mean by sharing your voice. No, we can disagree. I agree with that. We
Yes.
don't all have to think the same and say the same, but whatever we do utter from our lips should be done with love and respect on a mutual basis.
Definitely.
So that's why I have voices, and for
Yeah.
women, and I decided to focus on leadership because that we need so much more female leadership in the world. What does voice mean for you? Oh, I'll say one last thing, and I know you're going to echo it, and that is that a voice should be, so we should be seen, heard, and understood, and noted and understood. And I know we share that same philosophy. So what's voice mean for you, Eve?
So I echo everything that you've said there. Absolutely. But the word that I add is discovery. I think that I've always thought, what's the magic of the therapy room? What's the magic of the coaching space? What is the magic? The magic is the way that our words come out of our mouth and they travel around and they go back into our ears. And there's magic when we write, because the words come out of our hands onto the page where we see them and they go back into our eyes. And so when we are talking, when you were encouraging me to speak, Brenda, which you do so brilliantly, and I'm so grateful for, what you're doing is that you're allowing me to discover what my words are. There's a difference between knowing what's in your head and knowing what you're saying, because you're being given the opportunity to speak and be heard, to be listened to, and to have somebody attempt to understand. So there's that truth, but there's also the sense of discovery that, because of the way the human brain works, which is weird and complex, when I speak, I get to hear what I've said, and that's a different part of my brain is being used than when I'm just thinking. And so by opening up this space for the voices of women, and this is what honestly I just think so exciting about it, I feel like you've given everybody the opportunity to speak and hear what they themselves are saying, what they themselves think, because that's how when we speak, we discover our own truth. It's not like we knew it and then we said it and we went, look, there's my truth. What happens is that we speak it and then we hear what we've said and we go, damn, I agree with that. Or actually, I'm not sure if I do agree with that. Maybe I need to hear, what do you think? And that's what happens. So when you allow voices to come out in the way that you're doing, you're allowing discovery. And as you know, my kind of curiosity, which is such an important thing.
Yeah.
That's what you're allowing. And that's the added flavor of discovery. And that I find that thrilling.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear you say that, because you don't always think things, and when you get other people's perceptions, they impact your own thinking, and then you can move the lens a bit and you think, oh, I never thought of that before. Oh, actually, I agree with that. Let me add that. And what happens is your truth and your confidence and your belief, that it just mushrooms. It gets bigger and bigger, and therefore your voice gets louder and louder,
Totally.
And for me, that's important. Plus, I didn't like being told to shut up always and be quietened. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean. Silence is a better word.
Well,
I don't like that at all. If anybody today tells me to be quiet or shush, oh dear, no.
But I
Anyway,
think it's so important what you've said. No, it's just really important what you've said there. And I think, that telling children should be seen and not heard, and don't speak unless you've got something, worth saying, and all of these different things. And I think there's balance in all of this. But we just only really discover what we think when we say it to someone who's willing to listen.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I really love that. I really love that. Hearing that is just like, wow. It's like another light's just going on inside my head. So you did say yes to Voices of Women. You've kind of spoken a wee bit about it, but so let's not maybe go for that bit again, but what do you hope happens from Voices of Women?
For me personally, or for?
Well, both personally and for the reader and the world.
So I think what I hope happens, is that the very amazing and very normal, the people in Voices of Women, from the bits that I've read, and what I've seen is, and I hope that it helps people understand that we're all normal and we're all extraordinary and we're all followers and we're all leaders and we're all a bit of a mishmash, and that's good, because that's what diversity is. Diversity is the variety, the sheer rainbow deliciousness, like in the image that you have behind.
All the colors.
All the colors, you know, some people say, oh, I'm very black and white, there's just gray in between. No, there's not. There's a rainbow in between, and there's a multitude. And so what I hope is that people will read voices of women and will identify themselves within one of the stories, and there's sufficient depth and wisdom and personal sharing in that people will go, hold on, I like these people. I'm a leader. I've got a voice. I can speak. And so that's what I hope. I know that for me personally, being involved in this has emphasized to me that actually I have got something to say, which is really important, because you sit there in your own head, and again, you've got to get it out to know what you know.
Yeah.
And what you believe. So for me personally, I hope that it stands as a continuing reminder to me that my voice is worth getting out there, and the more I do, the more truth about myself I'll understand, which is cool. And I hope that other people will read it and think, God, these are just normal people. I'm a normal people too.
Exactly.
Oh, there's no limits in what I can do, and that's what I hope, because wouldn't I just, again, it's thrilling, makes me excited.
And what I've learned, and even just looking at my own story, being born in a house inside a hole 6 foot by 6 foot, that's how I came into the world, and where I am today. And I deserve, and I've earned more than deserve. I've earned where I am today, because I've had vision and I've followed a dream and I work hard. No one gets to, and this is what people don't see. They don't see how deep that iceberg is.
Yes.
They don't see how deep you had to go and how dark and cold and alone you had to be. But there's always a chink of light. The light never goes out inside of us. Never, never.
True.
It gets buried. It gets hidden. We ignore it. But it's never eliminated, ever.
No.
So for me, it's just so important that, you know, we come together, we create a movement, and more people are talking and more people are speaking, because it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't define you. And when you read many of these stories, including your own, Eve, in Voices of Women, many of the women in that book have come from a very lowly place in terms of humble. You know, it's we don't come from a privileged place, except we're alive and we're privileged to make the right choices, to have opportunity to forge the path, to walk the path less traveled. We've done it all. But do you know what? That is what life's about. Life's not a bed of roses. How many people do we know that are privileged but they're miserable?
I agree with you, and I think one of the things that I've learned as I've got older, and I've really learned, is you're right. There is that cold, dark spaces that we have to go to, and I don't know if this is the same for you as it is for me, but it's what really I love about the anthologies that you do, actually, Brenda, is when life is difficult and when life is a struggle, we often have to dig deep into ourselves, into those dark places. But where I think real strength and real growth happens is when we're able to connect, when we're able to join together, when I'm able to open up to you about how I feel and then hear about you, and then all the other women in Voices of Women and all the people in your other anthologies connect up. And life is about connection through these voices. And when you go from that humble, you know, me, I had no education. I should have failed. I should have failed again and again as everything. Oh no, fail. But when you start realizing you can connect to other people, and they're the other people who share your dreams and your aspirations and your hopes and what you want for the world, and then you go, blimey, it's not just me. I'm not as isolated. And that isolated upbringing turns into this extraordinary community that you just think, oh my God, that's so cool. Because that's the magic of it. It's going from that I can only just about survive by myself to realize that we're all holding hands, we're all together, like we can, and that's what shit matters.
And that's the whole beauty of it. And you know, we're creating this family around Voice of Women, a sisterhood. And you know, I'm just thrilled, and I'm always humbled and feel extremely privileged when people say yes and they come and they join. And you know, we can make a difference in each other, people's lives, and we learn all the time from the posts, the communications that we have on a daily basis. So we've kind of come to the end. So we'll have lots more. We can talk about lots of subjects, that's for sure, Eve. So what's the last word you would like to say? What would you say to young women today?
I would say to young women today, when you look at people in leadership, when you see the people that you admire who are out there wherever they are, go and investigate their stories, because you'll nearly always find where they started probably wasn't too far away from where you are now. And I wish somebody had said that to me when I was younger. I wish they'd said, you know, those people who you really admire, go back and look what they were doing in their 20s or their 30s, because you'll find that probably they hadn't quite got the experience to realize that it's going to be okay. It's just
I know.
And that's what I would say on that.
Oh well, thanks very much. So there we go. We've come to the end of another Brilliance Today Voices of Women session. And Eve, you've been brilliant. Your insight is amazing. You've made me think in this last, 30 minutes or so. And thank you so much indeed for being a voice of women and for joining me today and bringing that voice to life. That's what I love about the books. This is why we have the conversations. We don't just write a story and publish it. No, we need to enliven the words that are on the pages. So thank you. And I know you will continue to do that. So I hope there's been something in here for everybody. But Eve, I nearly forgot, how can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me by just Googling Eve Stanway, and I will come up, and I help people fundamentally actually having difficult conversations, whether it's in divorce and breakup, whether it's with themselves, whether it's with the boss. So that's where you can find me. Google me.
Google
will find you. They will connect you.
On Google them, you know.
Thank you,
everybody. So this is Brenda saying, be brilliant. Much love. Until the next session, have fun.
Thank you. Goodbye.
That's it for this episode of Brilliance Today. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For more information or to contact Book Brilliance Publishing, visit bookbrilliancepublishing.com. And remember, do different. Be brilliant.